let's just cover a few normal admin matters. So if you are in the venue, you are encouraged to join the meeting where you are seated so that when you guys ask a question or comment, people that are in the online platform, they can also follow through what you are saying. With students that are online, you are requested to please mute your mic at all times unless you want to say something. And if you want to say something, please use the icons in your team, the raise your hand icon to be specific so that we can identify your hand from the venues. So please just do that. Some of you don't have access to the chat section, so please give your comments verbatim. Don't text on the chat section because we're not gonna see them. And then another thing we encourage, of course, is for you guys to talk. This is not a lecture, it's a tutorial. We always emphasize on that. So to fully benefit, you need to talk and interact with us. Then the last one was never attend a tutorial if you haven't read. But I believe we are done with readings because this is the last week. Are we done with reading? No. Oh, we're gonna read on the exam day. Okay, it's fine. We are yet to finish. It's fine. It's fine, guys. Yeah. So that's what we have. So let's just get straight to the session agenda. As always, we're gonna cover academic writing. It's an issue, guys. It's an issue. Some of you were penalized in your exams because of academic writing. So we are gonna re-emphasize it, but we are not talking about the beggar today. Ne? Yeah, we will talk about something else. Yeah. So we're just gonna emphasize on academic writing and again for the benefit of the new students that are with us in the online platform. And then another one is that we're gonna look at the structure agency paradox. It may come back in the exam, and if it comes back, you'll have to apply to the Wilson Stridom article. So specifically that article, it's an exam question that was asked last of last year for first year final exams. So it may come back again this year. And since we didn't get an assignment on it, then it's definitely in the exam. So we just making pre-assumptions. So you may be getting 2 essay questions. The Wilson Stridom analysis, fees must fall and roots must fall. Either way, you either apply your structure agency paradox or you're applying your sociological paradigm. So that's what we're gonna look at. So the session is basically broken into 3 parts: academic writing, Wilson Stridom article where we're gonna apply structure agency. And the last part will be sociological paradigms. We did not do the theory section of it, so we're gonna do it today and we'll see how do we apply it to fees must fall and roots must fall for your essay. So that's your exam, guys. Ne? So you may be getting 2 exam questions. You have to choose one. You'll be made to choose one. It's either you write on Wilson Stridom or you write on fees must fall. Applying your sociological paradigm. So that's what we have. Now, let's just start with academic writing. So this is the cycle we did last time, right? So we said the first step of academic writing is you knowing your topic. Now, at this moment, you don't know your topic. You're gonna find out your topic either on Monday or on the exam day, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, depending on what the sociology team decides to do. So let's just take note of that. Now you need to know your topic. It's very important. Knowing your topic assists you in filtering what content is going to go into your essay, right? So you need to then read and research after knowing your topic. Now in this situation, there won't be time, guys, for you to read. So make sure that by next week you have gone through all your essay questions so that you can no, not your essay question. You have gone through all your readings in your course pack so that you can approach any exam question that they may give you. Then again, you need to outline and plan. This is very important. So in this one, you need to, in a way, find out how are you gonna order the arguments. If it's, for example, if it's fees must fall, it's gonna be a very argumentative essay where you are trying to show what happened and how do the paradigms, specifically symbolic interactionism and structural functionalism, can be applied in the two events. And then we have the step on starting to write, review and editing. So that's what we have. Now, I said we have a new story today. So now I want us to think of an academic as a journalist. So what's special about journalists? What do journalists do? Please unmute wherever you are. You are unmuted. Mr. Nyazega, are you responding? Okay. Okay, so yes, we're thinking about journalists. What's special about journalists? What do they do? And I want us to think about then how does it relate to you guys as student teachers, essentially academics.
So journalists, they write news stories.
Okay, so journalists write stories. Now, the question is, how is that relative to what you guys are supposed to do? So I want you guys to compare an academic or a student teacher, which is you guys, with a journalist. Yes. No, it's fine.
Okay, but then as students, we write essays from what we have read. So as journalists, they also write stories according to what they've read.
So that's the relative things. Journalists write stories according to what they've heard or you said they've seen. Yes. So that's that. Now with an academic, which is you're supposed to write a final exam, right, on a topic that you've seen, specifically on an event that you have basically also seen, because we watched the documentary for Fees Must Fall, right? So that's something relevant. Now I want us to think about how do they go about the writing process. Now it's very relevant. We in a way go through the same process. Number one, the journalist is gonna determine what the headline of the newspaper article, if it's a newspaper article, is going to be. Are we fine, people? Yeah. So that's the first step. So they will have to know what the headline will be or what the writing will be about, and after knowing that, of course, they will have to research information that is very relevant to the headline. So if it's on Fees Must Fall, as you guys are writing on Fees Must Fall, and this journalist is writing on Fees Must Fall, they have to research information relevant to Fees Must Fall, which means at no point can the journalist talk about the Guptas and their corruption. It has to be something that has direct affiliation with Fees Must Fall. And one can argue to say, yes, the Guptas existed during the time where President Zuma was in power, and that's exactly the years where Fees Must Fall happened. So even though it's relevant, but we ask, is it relevant? Is it directly related to Fees Must Fall? The answer is no. So that's why you need to read and research, and you do directed or selective research because you want to relate the content to the topic or the headline that you are speaking on. So that's the next step. So you can see that a journalist and an academic, or you guys, you do more or less the same thing. Now, after getting the information, then you have to think about how are you going to represent the information. So you think about how are you, in a way, an outline of how you're going to order the facts that you've collected or the arguments that you've collected. So the journalist has to do the same thing. You guys have to do exactly the same thing in your writing. And then you can start writing, of course. And the very important thing is to say, after you have read and researched and outlined and planned for your article, you can then start the writing process. See, so that's exactly what you do. Now, after writing, guys, a very important one is to say you need to proofread your work, edit it so that you submit quality work. That's exactly what's expected from you as an academic. So this is the general essay outline, again, for the students that are in the online platform that are seeing this for the first time. So remember, an essay is made up of the introduction, body that has multiple paragraphs, and a conclusion. So I just want us to think about what must go into the introduction. So remember, the first sentence in the introduction is a hook. It draws the reader's attention. And then the thesis statement tells us what the essay is going to be about. If the essay is about fees must fall, you need to take a stance that you are arguing to say symbolic interactionism is the most relevant paradigm used to explain the events that happen in fees must fall, or you can say roads must fall. Structural functionalism is the most relative paradigm, or vice versa. So you take a stance to say, what is the essay actually looking at? And then in your roadmap, remember, you need to now tell us the order of arguments. What are you going to start by arguing? Are you gonna give us a descriptive analysis of the paradigm, structural functionalism and symbolic interactionism? Or are you giving us an analysis of what structure and agency is, and how is it relevant then to the events being discussed? If you are looking at Wilson's Strydom article, you'll be looking at how is structure and agency applied in that, and how did Wilson Strydom again use, for example, sociological research in finding the information he did. So you give us a sense of direction of how you're going to order your arguments. And of course, after that, you need to give us a link sentence. Remember, a link sentence is designed for creating coherence in your essay so that you don't have fragmented points, fragmented paradigms. So they need to be connected with each other to show that this is one essay. Same applies to a newspaper article. You will get an idea of what the next paragraph will be about. After this, you can actually go and analyze an online newspaper article just to see if they really apply these things. Okay, so that's that with the introduction. And then with the body, then it becomes quite complex. So remember, in the body, you need to write an academic paragraph. So I've seen a few of the essays before you submitted. People still have a problem with structuring your academic paragraphs, guys. You need to have a topic sentence. Now, why is it important? It tells us what the paragraph is about. Now, remember, a topic sentence will tell us that this paragraph is specifically focused on this point, which means you can't have points that were not demonstrated in the topic sentence within that paragraph. And remember, we follow a simple rule to say one paragraph, one point, one paragraph, one argument. So that's what you have. So the topic sentence, remember, it tells us what the paragraph is about. So in a way, it summarizes the main idea. And remember, after your topic sentence, you'll then have the next sentence explaining what the topic sentence is about. And you'll support your explanations with evidence from the readings. And remember, for that, you need to reference using APA referencing style, surname, year, page. People still have problems with referencing. Surname, year, page, if it's a direct quote, and surname and year if it is a paraphrase. So that's that. Then afterwards, you need to have a concluding sentence. So in a way, it summarizes what you have in that paragraph, and have another link sentence introducing us or taking us to the next paragraph. And then with the conclusion, remember in the conclusion, you are not allowed to include new information. So the conclusion sums up the main points of the paragraph, very important. So you re-emphasize what you stated. You cannot, and I repeat, you can never, ever, even in your dreams, have a reference in the conclusion. Because each time you reference something, you need to explain it. And when you explain that something in the conclusion, you are adding new information. And that doesn't qualify as a conclusion. It's something that doesn't have a name. So please, let's take note of that. Now, yeah. And then the last point then of your essay will be the reference list. So your reference list, in this case, I put in a picture of a plate, I didn't remove it. So in a way, you are saying, I'm saving this information from this platter to say these are the sources I contacted to prove that this information is accurate and true. Ne? And remember, you need to use APA referencing style again for this. So this is an example of how an APA referencing list will look. Remember to always indent your references so you see that they are not aligned. Ne? So the paragraph is sort of pushed to the frontal part. So that's what you need to do in your reference list. So I think that covers academic writing. I was brief and to the point about it. So we will talk about it next year again when we get to philosophy, looking at how do you write academic essays in a philosophical manner. Ne? So for now, we're gonna stop here. So this applies again, guys, for your literacy essay, sociology essay. What else do you have? History, English, whatever course that requires life orientation, whatever course that requires essays, you need to write like this in an academic manner. So let's get to the business of the day. So the first part of the session is week 1 to 3 content. Ne? So I said they ask you basic stuff, defining sociology, looking at the interrelatedness of the concepts and all of that. Now, something they did not focus on is the Wilson-Strydom article, saying it can come as an exam question. Yeah. Now, we were very strategic about the session, and I wanted to keep it on record again in this recording. We just want to emphasize, we do not know the VETS exam question. Ne? Pedagogical Science Institute does not know the exam question. If VETS decide to give you the same exam question we'll discuss now, then it's their fault. It was sourced from a previous paper. Ne? So let's just keep that on record. They give you the same exam, then yeah, it's your win, guys. Okay, so this is the essay question. It says, carefully read the article by Wilson-Strydom, 2017. You can note it down, guys. This is the essay question. It says, carefully read the article by Wilson-Strydom, 2017, which tries to understand some of the challenges and successes of Black South African students as they try to get a university education. Now, write a short essay of about 1,200 words, which is about 3 pages, in which you apply the sociological explanation and concepts that you outlined in assignment 1. So that's the VETS assignment you wrote, to describe the experiences of the Black students in the Wilson-Strydom reading. Your short essay will therefore include and apply what sociology is and how it explains South African society and the Black student situations from the micro, meso, and macro sociological perspective, what the sociological imagination is, and how it helps to connect biography of the students to the history of South African education. Now, and also show how the students' personal troubles are related to public issues, explanations of how structure of education create challenges for Black South African students, and how these students respond through their agents. So this is the essay question. They may give you guys this essay question. It's not like your assignment. I hope we can see. So you can write a whole essay on this. So let's just try to break it down and see if they give you that, how are you gonna approach it? Okay, now the first thing is, of course, unpack the question. Remember, the first step of academic writing is knowing the question. Now you need to look at then the content words that were given. So content words in linguistics are words that poses semantic content and contribute to the meaning of the sentence in which they occur. So in that essay question, we need to look at what are the main words or the main ideas that you are trying to explain in this essay. And we outlined them for you. So number one, you need to define what sociology is again. But this time it's a bit different. You are applicational about the definition of sociology. So that is what makes the essay question to be slightly different from your assignment. And again, you need to give us then the sociological perspectives. Now, remember, you are not doing that directly. They said you need to tell us the situations. Okay, you say you define sociology and you explain, you show rather how it explains South African society and the Black student situation from micro, meso, and macro sociological perspective. So again, your analysis of micro, meso, and macro is applicational. I hope we can see. Remember, in the previous assignment, it was descriptive. So they can give you the same, it's basically your same assignment, but in an applicational format. And again, guys, I'll repeat. They gave us, the assignment you did, they gave us as our assignment last year and the year before. Ne? Now, for the exam question, they gave this question, the same question, which means they can repeat it. So please beware. Ne? So you need to do that. Sociological perspectives, you are not describing them now. Rather, you are, in a way, both describing and telling us how do they relate to what Wilson Stridham talks about in his article. Do we understand, people? Yeah, it's applicational. And then again, you need to then apply your sociological imagination. So again, you are in a way restricted. You can describe it when you introduce what your analysis to it directly with what the sociological imagination is about. And most important, you need to now show, they said you need to show what the sociological imagination is and how it helps connect the biography of the students to the history of South African education and how the students' personal troubles are related to public issues. So I hope we can see that. It's still sociological imagination. You're just being specific to say in the context of what Wilson Stridham talks about, this is how the sociological imagination can be used to look at how personal troubles relate to public issues, how structure and agency interplay with each other, as the last section looks at. So they did say you need to show then in your explanation how structures of education create challenges to Black South African students and how these students respond through their agency. Now, this is very relevant to fees must fall and roots must fall. And we're gonna see how. So remember that it was because of structural issues in the education fraternity, specifically the higher education fraternity, that students decided to exercise their agency and took it to the street on fees must fall. That's exactly what Wilson Stridham talks about. Just that he takes a different approach. He looks at, in a way, we can say it's a symbolic interactionist analysis of it. To say students really focus on, in a way, he focuses on what drives the students to succeed in university academics. You see that? So it's not really about social issues like fees and all. He's focusing on the academics themselves and access to higher education. So he talks about great resilience and such concepts. So again, your structure and agency, you see, guys, you describe, but you are more on the applicational side. We are fine, people. Yes, so that's what you are doing. Now your final exam, I'm gonna just be honest with you. Your final exam is not gonna be easy because that is proper sociology. In the first assignment, you were expected to describe. So you are writing a summary of the readings. Now you are applying. It's not the same. So it's not gonna be descriptive. You are going to apply either question they're gonna give you, you have to apply what you read from the readings, which means you can't expect to read the readings on the day because it means it will be difficult for you to apply. Remember, for you to apply, you need to have read about the stuff prior. So when you see the question, you are now thinking about how do the readings that I read apply to the scenario given. So they can even do something new, guys, if it's not fees must fall. They can ask you to analyze the looting events that took place. Yeah, remember sociology, they can throw in just about anything. So don't again stick on fees must fall and Wilson's Stridom. Expect anything. So in either case, please take note of your take note of your your readings before the session. Then we have task weights. Then there's a definition of what task weights are. So we say task weights are the weights of phrases in a brief that tell you what to do. So now we need to go back to that essay. They gave you task weights. Again, this is an important thing. Remember, the situation is not the same. With the assignment question, we had an assignment briefing, remember, where I broke down the essay question for you. So in the exam, you'll have to do that on your own. So that's why I included this section to say, then if you are looking at your essay question, how do you actually analyze it and break it down so that you don't give unnecessary information that they did not ask you in that exam. So in the essay, you were asked to explain and apply. Those are task weights you were given. And let's just look at what is to explain. When you are explaining, you are telling us how things work or how they came to be the way they are. So you are, in a way, you are being descriptive to say this happened because of this. You are giving us cause and effect. We understand, people. So in this case, in the Wilson-Stridom situation, you do the same thing. Give us the cause and effect. Students exercise grit and resilience because of 1, 2, 3. You look at how are personal troubles influencing to them exercising grit and resilience. How do public issues lead to that, and things like that. So that's what you do. I'm gonna ask you to please leave and rejoin the meeting, please, because I think everyone can see. I think everyone can see the PowerPoint because it's gonna distract things if I'm gonna unshare and reshare. Okay, so please do that. Okay, and then looking at applying, then applying is to put to use the theoretical frameworks that were explained. So in that case, you are given the sociological imagination, the structure agency paradox. You apply that to the situation or to the article Wilson-Stridom. So that's what you need to do. Now, going back to the essay question, let's just identify the keywords or your task weights over there. So you were told, number one, to say, so they said your short essay will therefore include and apply. You see, apply. That's the task weight over there. And they said what sociology is and how it explains South African society and the Black students, So that's what you have there. And you are, of course, as you are doing that, you are expected then to apply, for example, the sociological imagination to that. Again, you need to apply the interplay between structure and agency to that. So those are your task weights. So make sure that you identify them in whatever essay question they are going to give you at VETS level. Okay, so now then let's then look at the plan of action. As you can see, the plan of action. So step one, if you are breaking down your question, Remember, guys, we are following the outline. So we are on the planning part of the cycle. So you need to define sociology and it's relevant to the article. So you are, again, looking at sociology in an applicational format. We're going to look at that in the next slide. Again, you need to outline what the three perspectives are and show examples of how they were used to analyze society. So you look at, again, it's something you can't do if you haven't read the article. You look at Wilson Stridom's article as a whole and you analyze it sociologically. You think about how did he use the nature of sociology as a study. Remember, we say it's scientific. So there are points where he uses statistics, for example, and it shows evidence of quantitative research. Remember that. We read the article, guys, and we saw the statistics in the article. So he uses statistics. He shows us that he is using sociology because we say it's a scientific study, which means it is proven. We use formal methods to gather information. And again, we think about how then did he apply the three perspectives, the meso, the micro, and the macro sense in looking at the influence of structure, in looking at the influence of structures on agents and the latter, of course. So that's what you look at. And then in step 2, then you'll have to practically define the sociological imagination. And then now you need to link it to the student's biography within the history of South Africa. So there you need to have some background knowledge of some of the problems that students face within the South African context. And you look at how does that biography then influence the structure, what personal troubles do the students have, what public issues can we link it with. So you look at those dynamics. Again, you need to then briefly describe the interdependence between structure and agency, and look in the context of looking at the experiences of the students, as Wilson Stridom talks about. So that was just an outline then of what we're gonna do. So I'm just gonna look at it in detail. Step 1, we said we need to look at defining sociology and looking at brain freeze, sorry. Defining sociology and then looking at the perspectives that we have in sociology. So as you can see, we say society is a complex chain with interdependent parts. Now the slide background itself shows you that. So we have this big society and the puzzle there represents the individual. So the individual is surrounded by these massive groups of people. And we say that when these people come together, in a way they complement each other or they complete what society, is in the broader sense. Now, the first step then you'll have to do is defining sociology. So guys, we are looking at, in a way, I'm answering the essay question itself in case they give you. Yeah? So your first part will be defining sociology. You've seen this countless of times. So we say sociology is a scientific study of human social interaction and the phenomena that arise from social relations. And we say sociology is about what happens when people interact with each other in terms of human social behavior and the social forces that shape human behavior. Now, what are the key words from this definition? Again, you need to identify them. Remember, the definition this time will be applicational. So when you identify them, you need to show how do they relate to the Wilson Stridom article. So for example, looking at, we say it's a scientific study. So you think about how did Wilson Stridom apply the scientificness of sociology in analyzing or in writing his article. And then again, you need to think about what human social interactions does Wilson Stridom talk about. And the last thing is to think about what social forces does he refer to and how do they then affect the students that he refers to. See, so that's what you need to look at. So I'm gonna be brief on it. Now we have a question. Then it's in a thought bubble. You need to ask yourself this question: how did Wilson conduct the scientific study? So you look at, for example, in the article itself, there's a point where he attaches tables of statistics showing students' accessibility rate to university and things like that. So that is showing us that he conducted scientific research, specifically quantitative research. And the article itself as a whole, remember, is an example of qualitative research because it gives us then an analysis of the statistics he had collected. So that's, you see, that's how he applied the scientificness of the study. In your essay, you need to outline such stuff. And again, of course, you need to make the link between social forces and the conversion forces, factors rather. So we are looking at what factors from the society affect how individuals will behave within the society. And again, we think about how do the social forces that arise from this society influence the individual in the reverse. So you think about the interplay between the two. And of course, your focus then is on the inequalities of educational opportunities. So the convention factor in this case will be the inequalities within the educational sector. And then we think about what social forces does that bring on the individual and how does the individual respond as a result. So you'll remember that Wilson Stridham talks about how individuals will exercise their grit and resilience in response to these social forces you'll get from society. So I hope Dr. Botha did justice with this section because you're gonna have problems in the exam if they give you that. Anyways, we have an interesting fact here. It says sociologists believe that society makes us and we make society. And the question then is, what does this mean? So I just want us to talk about that. Just a brief break from me talking too much. So what does it mean when we say society makes us and we make society? And I want us to think about how is this relative to the Wilson Stridham study that he made. Okay, I'm gonna pick people. Eh? Yes. Yeah, I'm picking Mr. Chair here. Yes. Okay. So what do you think it means when we say society makes us and we make society? What do you think sociologists mean by that? And how can you relate it then to the Wilson Stridham? To higher education.
I think when they say individuals makes the society, I think they're saying or the human interactions that they encounter every day give rise to social structures and social patterns. Then in turn, those social structures, they shape the individuals. Right.
It's hard. Next victim.
Not really. I'm not really.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be ready. A teacher must think on his feet.
I think so. My answer is the same as Mr. Tevin.
And what does the answer say?
Okay, I repeat the question, sir.
Yes. So we are saying that sociologists believe make society and society makes us. So we are just looking at what.
Okay, I haven't read the article, so I'll just think from top of my head. So we have scientists, we have people who like create technology. So we have social, say stop it. I'm child. No, say I'm child. Okay. People have, say I'm child.
You're coming on the right.
Say I don't know the article. I didn't.
Okay. Casimira, okay. The house has spoken.
What's the question?
Society makes us and we make society. What does that mean and how does it relate to the Wilson's guide on life in your perspective?
Okay, in my perspective, so society makes us because what actually happens in the society affects us.
Speak up, Rosie.
Okay, repeat the question.
Society makes us, we make society. What does that mean and how does it relate to the Wilson's guide on life?
So society just like affects how we turn out to be or behave or act in a certain way. And how we act, it also affects the society. So
How we care about the how in the context.
no, I didn't.
Looking at it in terms of inequalities. To great resilience.
No, I didn't do that. Or inequality, educational opportunities. Okay, so
Okay. No, people have distinctions in sociology. I'm not gonna leave you.
You caught me off guard, man. I'm not
That's
ready.
the point. That's the beauty about
Ish. Man. Casamiro has spoken there. So,
what did Casimira say?
I don't know the camera.
Okay.
Okay, sure.
I was motivating you to speak.
I know, man. Okay,
You're wasting time.
I'm child. I'm child. I'm child. Ish. So, what you numbers?
Society makes us, we make society. What does that mean?
Oh,
And
that's
apply
simple.
it to-
Okay. So, society makes us and we make the society. So it simply means that society is there because of us, and the society is the one that makes us to be act in a certain way. You see. Then I haven't engaged with the article there.
Yes. Then to continue from what you are saying, then it simply means that when we choose to exercise our grit and resilience as a result of certain societal forces, or certain social forces from the society, you exercise grit and resilience simply means that. And again, we say the inequalities that will exist within society are the ones that determine whether we are going to be forced or be motivated to exercise our grit and resilience or not. So remember, it does talk about motivation and things like that. So the article is somewhat inclusive of a bit of psychological concepts to it, but again, it is looking at it in sociological context. Okay, and then remember we have then 3 sociological paradigms or perspectives. That is your micro-sociology that looks at individuals. And remember, we apply an objective analysis of the individuals' interactions. And then we also have meso sociology that examines groups and communities, and macro sociology that looks at global world interactions, nation states, international relations, and the bigger or broader societal structures. So those are the three perspectives we have. Now, in this case, we want you guys to think about how do these perspectives assist Wilson Stridham in analyzing society. So here's another thought bubble there. It says Wilson refers to statistics from Stats SA. Ne? And the question is then, how can you link the success or failures of Black students in university to these statistics? So you see, you can become subjective about it because he makes reference to the structural inequalities that exist in society as a result of class, social status, and race, amongst other things that he talks about. So if you're looking at the statistics that he provides, we can then ask you to look at how can you use the sociological perspectives, being the micro, the meso, and the macro in trying to analyze how he portrays ways that we choose to analyze or look at society. So that's something that he talks about. Now remember, in the micro sociological sense, we focus on agents. So remember, there is a difference between agents or social agents and social agency. Social agents are the ones that exercise their social agency. Social agency is the ability to act independent of the social structures. And we say social agents are the ones that act independent of their social structure. And in the meso-sociological sense, or the mid-range sociological sense, we look at the community and the organizations that exist in community. So in that, we are looking at the structuralization, basically, of people within the community or the communal sense. And then in the macro sense, we look at large-scale social structures that form society. So looking at these three steps, you think about how do the statistics assist Wilson, or how does Wilson refer, or rather use these perspectives in trying to analyze the statistics that, or rather, the inequalities within the society and at the micro, meso, and the macro sense. So those are the things we look at. So in this case, you are looking at the connections between the micro and the macro. I hope, guys, that makes sense. So we're still looking at what you will do if you were given that essay question. Okay, so now moving on to the next part. So my laptop is clowning. Okay, so now moving on to the next part, we'll be thinking about then how, we will be thinking then about how do we point down or narrow down all of this information and putting it to perspective in the writing process. So remember, we were just introducing the applications of sociology, the definition of sociology, the perspectives and all of that in how Wilson Stridham looks at his article. So in this case, we are making the strange familiar and the familiar strange. So you are being sociological about it. Ne? Okay, we can say we are being philosophical in a way about it. We are critically analyzing the article itself from the perspective of the paradigms not the paradigms, the structure agency paradox and the context that comes with it. Now, the first thing that you need to understand then is the basics. So remember, we are looking at that part of the essay that was saying you need to now show, you need to apply your sociological imagination to this, how structure and agency play into this, how does biography influence this, and how does history influence this, yes.
do we really have to explain the sociological approach?
You don't have to explain the sociological approach. You can just focus on the micro and the macro. Ne? So you'll notice that at the bottom of my slide, I wrote the macro connections. So to make your life easy, just focus on the two. Ne? So meso is just for you to know that we have a meso perspective. So remember that if we are looking at it in the perspective of, or rather in the sense of paradigms, we can say that we just have two types of paradigms, and that is the micro being symbolic interactionism and the macro being conflict theory and structural functionalism. So when we want to be specific and are trying to look at organization of people between the broader and the individual, we then include the communities, but you don't necessarily have to talk about the meso to make your life easy. Focus on the micro and the macro perspective. And in the last slide from Ms. Tibello, for week 5 lectures, if you listen to them, she did outline that your essay will expect you to show the applications of your understanding of the micro and the macro sociological perspective. So you really going to focus on symbolic interactionism and structural functionalism. So you can include conflict theory, it depends on what they give you in the essay question, but you just focus on the two. I hope that answers your question. So we say biography, remember, is an account of someone's life written by someone else. So that is from the Oxford Dictionary. Now, how does it relate to this? Now, we say that the biography does not only include work, education, residentials, and relationship, but it also speaks to the events that one faces in their life. So we look at their successes in life, and some people will talk about their weaknesses too, as part of biography. Now, in the sociological sense, we think about what social forces led to the strengths or that the person has had in their life, and what again led to the weaknesses that they had, what social forces influenced that. So you look at both sides of the picture. Remember, you're applying your sociological imagination in this part. And again, you think about the history. So we say the history, or history is the study of past events, particularly in human affairs. So in the case of sociology, we want to depict events that have had a greater impact on people's biography and behavior. And again, we think about how did these events shape how society became. So we'll talk about it again. Let me just cover it. In the fees must fall context, you do the same thing. You think about how did the history of Bantu education as a policy lead to fees must fall in the long term. You see that? Because it was a structural inequality that was introduced in the past, in the history of South Africa. But because of that, we had a generational problem or public issue of students, specifically Black students, being excluded when it comes to their access to higher education, which is exactly what Wilson Stridham talks about. You see that? So you think about that in that sense. So for Mills, he says the life of an individual in the history of the society cannot be understood without the comprehension of both. So Mills argues to say the individual is shaped by the history of their society. That's a very powerful statement. You can even put this as your hook. I'm not saying everyone must go and write this as their hook, but it's a powerful statement, especially if you want to introduce the idea of the idea of structure, agency, and the analysis thereof. And he says that in terms of the social dynamics and the interplay or interdependence within the two. So you can't understand structure and agency or the history of the society without looking at the individual, and vice versa. Of course, you can't understand what shapes the individual's biography without looking at their history. So that's what we look at. And for you to do this, of course, you need to apply your sociological imagination. So we say sociological imagination is the vivid awareness of the interplay between personal troubles and public issues. And according to Dr. Botha, in his 2020 slide, he defines it as the ability to identify and understand the larger societal processes. Take note of the highlighted words behind our everyday experiences, and he says that this is called the sociological imagination, and it's something that C. Wright Mills came up with. So an important thing is to say that when we are able to identify and understand larger society, and narrowing it down to our day-to-day experiences, we are saying that you are applying your sociological imagination. And that's what Mills talks about. Directly quoting him, he defines the sociological imagination as one that enables us to grasp the history and biography and the relationships between the two within society. So in the context of the Wilson Stridham article, you need to ask yourself now, how does Wilson define the above concepts? Which concepts? Resilience and grit. So remember, he defines resilience and grit in the context of them being formed as a result of the society's history. You see that? And he says that these things, these two features or traits, being resilience and grit, are acquired by the individual as influenced by the social forces that they are exposed to within the society. So I hope you understand that, guys. So we're looking at that. What's going on? Yes. So we're looking at that. Yeah, guys. And basically, guys, I'm writing your essay for you. Ne? This is the analysis you had to make on your own. So we are just making life easy for you guys. So you need to make then the links between the sociological imagination and resilience. So you think about how does the sociological imagination, when applied, assist us in trying to understand where resilience comes from, or how people get to be resilient, and how do people also acquire grit in the process. So you think about how are the two concepts related, how are they different, how do they inform each other, how do they inform the individual. Okay, so then let's look at the central metaphor. So the sociological imagination answers two questions. Number one, who are we? And it's an important question that Wilson Stridham looks at. He looks at who are we? Who is the we? In the article, it's the students. Looking at who are the students. And again, we're looking at then how did the students get to the situation that they are at? So remember, they are in a paradoxical situation where they have unequal access to higher education. And some have to put in more effort than others to access it and survive, get to graduation. Some have to put in little effort than others. So we look at the structural inequalities to that. So when you answer the question, who are we? You're basically looking at biography, right? So we are looking at the biography of the individual. We are looking at how is the social agent formed by the society that they come from. And when you look at how did we get there, then you are looking at what complex historical events led them to where they are in their academic journey, in higher education. And we are thinking about how do they then influence how these individuals end up exercising their agency or end up behaving. And we say that they exercise their agency when they become resilient and have grit. Yeah, so basically who we are is best described in the sense of where we live, our education, our work experience, and the major issues of society that impact our lives. So those major issues can include the social state, the social class that you are formed, the social status you are formed, the race, the tribe, all of those complex matters. They really influence who you are, the biography that you gain. And we say that you have these aspects influencing who you are as a result of the society's history that you come from. And that's something that Mr. Wilson Stridom talks about. So I hope you understand, people. So now, to help yourself and make your life easy, you need to make relevant links to the articles. Now you think about, remember you were asked to look at how do personal troubles lead to public issues and the reverse. So according to Mills, what is it that is being referred to as troubles? So you need to use some of the examples that Wilson Stridom looks at. What personal troubles does he make reference to in his article? And again, we think about what public issues does he say lead to these personal troubles? Or what public issues does he say they are already pre-existing? So when these students come, they get into the social structure that has pre-existing public issues. And as a result, they end up influencing or affecting how they exercise their agency and how they end up becoming. So that's something that you need to really make in your analysis. Okay, so now let's think about then structure agency. We've been talking about it indirectly, applying it. Now we say that these two are interrelated. And you'll remember at first I said we are looking at the structure agency paradox. The paradox is something that is debated on. Some people argue to say we can think about structure as an independent entity. And some sociologists say, no, we can't do that. We need to include agency. So it's the same debate even the sociological theories have. Some argue to say we need to focus on the broader society when we are studying, when we are doing the study of sociology, and those will be your conflict theorists and your structural functionalists. And while symbolic interactionist theorists will argue to say, no, we need to think about the fact that individuals become individuals as a result of, structures become structures as a result of the individuals that make them. So hence we have symbolic interactionism that focuses on the individual. Anyways, let's just focus on structure and agency. So in simple terms, we say agency refers to the individual's capacity to act outside of structure, to the structural do's and don'ts. Ne? So remember, we say that structure can constrain and enable behavior. Ne? So that's what we said in the previous tutorials we've had, even in the exam briefing. And we say that agency then is the ability to act independent of these do's and don'ts that society puts in, or that structure puts in. If you act independent of them in a good way or in a bad way, then you are exercising your agency. So structure is simply then the arrangement of society in relation to the societal needs. It is formed by people, formed by certain networks and patterns that exist in society. And we say that structure basically forms our social institutions. Yeah? And remember, we make a distinction between the two to say in social institutions and social structures are different concepts. Conceptually, they are different. In that social institutions may focus on our major institutions in society, being your family, your religion, your education, your politics, and your economy. So those are the 5 social institutions. And we say within these social institutions, we have different social structures. And these are the structures in a way that sort of determine how are people going to be arranged within the social institutions, and what do structures use for the arrangement of people? They use the constrainers and the enablers to say in this structure, in the education context, you are not allowed to protest, for example, because that forms part of the politics institution. In this context, you are not allowed to pray because it forms part of the religion institution. While we acknowledge that some institutions may work with each other. Ne? Yes, for example, when you find jobs, guys, you'll realize that there are schools that say we are not gonna include religion at all because of the diverse religions within from the learners in the school, you see. Yeah, and private schools usually do that. So they have no prayer sessions at all because of the diverse students that are there. So you find that in such schools, you see, the structure is saying no prayer, no religion in the school. So in a way, that is a social constraint to say we don't practice anything that forms part of their religion institutions within this. And again, that is not to say that certain individuals may choose to pray within the school. And when they choose to pray, then they are exercising their social agents because they're acting independent of the structure. I'm just making an example so you guys understand the interplay between the two. Yeah, so that is that. We are fine, we understand people. Okay, then can we take this down? I remember a lot of you had a problem with getting a definition for structure. That is academic, so here's a definition that you can actually reference. You can check out this article. So we say structure is the systematic and pattern and okay, we say structure is systematic and patterned, and agency is contingent and random. So structure is constrained, agency is freedom. Structure is static, agency is active. Structure is collective, agency is individual. Yeah, you can write a whole essay analyzing this one quote actually. So it makes your life easy. Do check it out if you have to define it. And let me not say if you have to define it, guys. Whatever essay they're gonna give you, you have to talk about structure and agents. Doesn't matter if it's paradigms or what. You have to talk about structure and agents. If it's this, either way, guys, in your exam, you have to define it. So you can note it down, Hayes 1994, page 57. You can just note the scholar, so you go to Google Scholar and find the article because it's gonna make your life easy. You see, even they include some politics to it. Agency is freedom. So you can think about in the fees must fall context. The students wanted financial freedom. See, they wanted freedom to free higher education. They wanted fees to fall. And what did they do for them to get that freedom? They exercised their agency. So they acted in a random formats. That's why we say that agency is contingent. And we know that one institution which is VETS started the fees must fall protest in the broader sense, and we had other institutions also perpetuating the same events. Yes, we had other institutions perpetuating the same events, which shows us that agency is very contingent if you think about it. Okay, so that's what we have over there. Okay, now when you're looking at structure and agency, remember guys, we said it is interdependent. Think about the puzzle here. Ne? So the red part shows us that they are interrelated with each other. So what is the interdependence? It goes back to the interesting fact we talked about to say that society makes us and we make society. So it is a dialectic kind of a relationship or a dualistic kind of a relationship where one makes the other and the other also informs how the other is going to behave. So society is made up of two integral parts that cannot exist without the other. So social agents make up structure, and we are saying that structures will not exist without social agents or individuals. And again, we are saying individuals wouldn't really know how to interact with each other without the presence of structure, because it is through it enabling and constraining their behavior, that informs how people or social agents are going to brain freeze, are going to, guys, you get what I mean? Are going to are going to interact with each other. Yes, that's what I was looking for. Yes, and then thinking about the interplay, then we say that social forces exerted by social structures affect the social actions of the social agents. Yeah, so will they allow being constrained or enabled to behave in a certain way by the structure, or are they going to act independent of it? So that's the interplay between that. So in a way, human behavior in a sociological sense is informed by the broader society. And we can say, again, this is a connection to what you did in psychology, né? To say you can condition a person and all of that. Please don't talk about that in your essay, please. Anyways, in your essay, then you need to outline an analysis of structure and agency and looking at the relationships between the two based on the article. So in conclusion to this section, we want you guys to be able to define these words and talk about them in your essay. So the first word is agency. And we say that we think about how do convention factors or how do social forces in society influence the social agency of the individual, and how do people undergo a process of internal processing of what the structure is enabling them or constraining them to do. So we think about for them to exercise their agents, what internal capabilities do they first have? Do they discern, okay, because I have an unequal access to education, I need to behave in this way. So we think about what do they use to determine how they will behave. And again, we think about then what affiliations do they make for them to ensure that they exercise their agency. So in that case, we think about how do these people come together as social agents to try and act in a certain way that changes or that leads to social change in society. Then we also think about self-efficacy. The self-efficacy they are talking about here, the same self-efficacy that Bandura talks about. Yeah, so that's exactly the same thing to say. Please don't reference Bandura and Crane. Yeah, please, guys, focus on the sociological way to look at self-efficacy. Remember, we said self-efficacy simply looks at what drives the person to act in a certain way. That's that. Please look for a more academic way to explain it. And then we say then the drives or the self-efficacy leads to people acting in certain ways within the different social structures. And we say that in the social structures, we can have certain social forces that may affect the individual, and financial constraints is the social force that Wilson Stridham chooses to focus on. So that's something important to think about. And again, we then think about, even though there are social constraints, what influence do teachers play in influencing the individual? And at the end, we then think about the role of the teacher as a social agent for change in society. So we think about what convention factors, what social forces, or what kind of social force does the teacher in turn end up becoming for the students or for the social agents within that particular context. So guys, that's the whole cycle. I basically summarized the entire cycle, the entire article that you have to look at. So you need to think about this as you are writing that. Now you'll remember that when we started sociology, I said you need to make a concept map of all the words that start with social. Ne? So we are closing the dictionary today. So these are some of the words you met social questions. Now remember, guys, it's important to know the differences between these words so that in your essay, you don't use them haphazard. You need to know what each one means. Social questions are questions that are asked about society. It's pretty clear. Ne? Social patterns, those are your trends that exist within the society. So social patterns are also known as social trends. And in the Wilson-Strydom article, you'll find some of these concepts. Ne? And then again, you think about what a social issue is. So a social issue is more like your public issue that is affecting more individuals within that society. Social fact is what Durkheim talks about when he calls his theory of functionalism. So he talks about social facts to say those are things that we cannot really change about society. It's things like your ethical beliefs and things like this. We talked about that. And social action is different, guys, from social actors. Ne? Social action is how you decide to exercise your agency, basically. So the act of exercising agency is a social action by the social actor, being the individual. So I hope that makes sense. Social aspects, so those are views and perspectives about the society. Social features, those are traits again, not trends, traits about society. The social institutions, those are your core major fragments of society that inform how people are going to be structured within society. And we talk about 5 of them, remember that. And a social system is a social system is a dialectical grouping of people in a certain way, and it informs how they decide to behave and do certain things within that society or within that particular social context. So they act in a systematic manner in that sense. And then social structure, remember, looks at the constrainers and enablers that are brought by how people are arranged within the society. And the social process, an example of that is what is happening here. We are engaging in a tutorial and it's a social process, right? So it's an event that takes place within society. And social groups, so that's the arrangement of people. So it can be three or more, 2 or more. That's a group format. And social transformation is relative to, in a way, your revolutionary changes that come within society, your industrial revolutions and things like that. So Giddens, a critical introduction, the article talks about social transformation, looking at how did industrial revolutions lead to the development of sociology as a study. Last one is social change. Social change looks at how do we then move from one era to the other as a society, as a collective society. So those are your takeaway points, guys, from this. And this concludes with 1, 2, 3 work. Are we fine? Are we fine, people? We are fine. Okay, then let's talk about serious stuff. Yes, week 4. Yes, we've been looking at week 1 to 3. So week 4 to 5. Yes. Yeah, so now we're looking at week 4 to 5 work. Yeah, so we're gonna try, no one has to catch a bus here. I mean, yeah, no one has to catch a bus. And there are people online. Guys, remember, it's about you and not about me. It's your exam. Oh, you want a break? Okay, we can take a 5 minutes break because no one is going anywhere. Okay, so students online, we're gonna take a 5 minutes break and we're gonna continue with week 4 to 5 work after that. No, not tomorrow, guys, I can't. Okay, so 20 to 9, we are starting. Ne? I don't know. Yeah. So we basically have complex sociology that is untouched, week 4 to 5. Okay. In the meantime, with online students, guys, can I just take any questions you guys may have, or any comments you may have so far in the 5 minutes break? So because I've been speaking, are you guys fine?
Mr. Boys. Mr. Boys.
Yes, yes. Yes, sir.
Mr. Boys.
Yes, yes, I'm listening.
Yeah.
Yes, you can speak.
Oh yeah, Mr. Boys, can you please show again the essay question? Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let me just go back to it. Okay. So there is the essay question. So part 2 of the session will be looking at the next essay question. It's going to be centered around fees must fall.
Yes, Mr. Boys, I'm calling it all of it.
Okay. So we'll be resuming the session 2022-9.
Okay, so let's just yes, time is up, guys. Let's just come back. Okay. Oh, guys, to the people online, by the way, this is me, Peter Mbuyisa, guy who is speaking here. I forgot to introduce myself. Just for record purposes, I'm Peter Mbuyisa. I formerly work for the university as an academic students advisor. I have 15 students allocated to me. Oh, actually, it's 16. Yes, 16 students allocated to me that I advise those academically. So I am the founder of Pedagogical Science Institute, the one that is hosting the session. And you might have seen that we had the SARS mentorship program, so they couldn't join us today. So the session is predominantly a Pedagogical Science Institute session as a result. So that's why we had delays in arrangements and all of that. So if you are politically woke, you might know that there was some meeting today at the education campus, so they went on to attend. Anyways, we are gonna resume live now. So if you're in the live, so you just follow through the events that are happening in the venue, please rejoin the live. We are going to start. We are going to start right about now. So just gonna ask them to settle down. Oh yes, and I hope the session is helpful.
Okay, guys, let's come back. Let's come back. Okay, so we're just gonna give you a moment to go back to the live if you had joined, and yeah, gonna resume right now. Let's just say 10 to. With a Zulu accent, Bafethu. Okay, guys, can you settle down? We start in 1 minute. Kumalo, where did you leave the others? Yeah. They were gonna no, this first part you guys were gonna survive it. This part is what you don't know at all. The paradigms, the theory into the paradigms. We hadn't done that. We've been overshadowing it. Oh, and you, at least you attended. You were there online, eh? Yes, yes, yes. Yes, how do you analyze fees? Remember, the essay is about analyzing fees must fall and roots must fall using paradigms. You don't focus on fees must fall, you focus on the analysis brought by paradigms. Which means if you, yeah, now I fear that. Now I fear if you're gonna focus on the events, on the details of the events and not the analysis, you're gonna fail your exam, yeah? So you need to know. Hey, Pablo! Oh, you wanna ask it on record? Oh. That walk. Yes. 81,43. 81,43. And this, in past semester, it was and semester 1 was 84. This year, not this year. And I can give you the prediction of my final. Assumptions. Oh, yeah, I think, with every research paper, there are some things that are of focus and there's that information that's floating. Yeah, so if you can't analyze it, so if it doesn't answer the essay question, don't include it. You saw the beggar presentation last time. Eh? Yeah, so remember we said when you're making a burger, you're selective about the ingredients. There are so many shopping markets a burger. So think about it the same way. For any essay, select what answers the question. If it doesn't, leave it out. Oh. Mm. No, if you just have to, njalo, always, till PhD, ask yourself, for any academic paper, does it answer the question? Yeah, I can send the example here. Yeah, journalists today. Yeah, even them, they choose a headline, then they have loads of information. They always have to ask, is this relevant to the headline? If it's not, they don't include it. So it depends on the question they give. If it wants you to talk about them, then you need to include them. If they didn't ask for them, don't put things that are Go to Bath. Okay, guys, people online are probably feeling left out a bit. So let's continue. Start at 9. Okay, 6 minutes. Okay. So guys, can I just ask a favor? You can go back to Vet's groups and ask them to rejoin at 9. I think you also need the break there online because it's a lot of content really to take in. So you'll understand if you guys just need to rest up. And again, it's gonna rest my voice because I'm about to do even more talking.
Hey guys, am I the only one who can hear anything or I don't know?
Okay, guys, let's. Hello. Can we settle down? Hi. Asihlale phansi, guys. 10 past. Okay, no, it's fine. Ngizokhuluma nabantu online. Ngahlala no 10 past. Okay, so guys, we are. Yeah, no, it's fine. Okay, so we are on the week 4 to 5 section of the tutorials. Look at my mic. Now it's on. Yes, so we are looking at the last section of the work. Yes, guys, they don't want to settle down, so they're saying 10 past, so it's fine. We'll continue without them. I'm exercising my agency because the structure is constraining my work. I'm exercising my agency. Conflict you. Okay, anyways, guys, let's continue then with what we were doing. So week 4 to 5 work. If you went for a drink, can you come back, please? If you went for water, whatever you were doing. So you can just come back and listen to the last section of the work. Okay, so now here is a possible question. Pedagogical Science Institute students have seen this essay question in their mock examination that they wrote. So this essay question practically covers everything they may ask. Ne? So they may ask you a section of this. They can ask you to focus on fees must fall only and leave roads must fall, or they can ask you to focus on both. And again, they can ask you to just focus on one perspective or just two. Yeah, so either way, this question embodies everything so that we cover everything there. Okay, now it says critically expropriate the interactions between the micro, the meso, and the macro perspectives in their applicability to our understanding of the interplay between structure and agency in our analysis of the hashtag roads must fall and hashtag fees must fall student protest through an extrapolation of the applicability of the sociological imagination in the justification of some of the events that took place during the years 2015 to 2016. Yeah, where do you start, Baguso? Where do you even start? So guys, you may get a question like this, né? But of course, as I said, they can be focal to a specific event and not all of them. They can ask you to focus on fees must fall only. They can ask you to focus on both, but removing one of the perspectives. So you just need to you just need to do the process we did in the first part. Ne? So remember, you look at the action weights in the essay question. So the action weights that we have is the word expropriate. Ne? So they said critically expropriate. What is to expropriate? You may have heard EFF saying land expropriation without a compensation a lot. Ne? So to expropriate something is to take something and break it down or distribute it amongst people in terms of land expropriation without compensation. So we are taking land and we are distributing it to people. So in this case, you are supposed to take the fees must fall and roads must fall events and break them down, critically so. And as you are breaking them down, you need to show us which micro, meso, and macro perspectives can be used to analyze them. So you notice that again in this question there is a trick, né? For PSI students that wrote this essay. There was a trick. We did not tell you which perspectives to include. We expected you to know the perspectives. That's why we put in micro, meso, and macro. So you're supposed to talk about your micro perspective being symbolic interactionism, your meso perspective being structural functionalism. And remember that structural functionalism can be both a meso and a macro sociological perspective. And the macro perspective we think about is symbolic interactionism. Of course, for emphasis, it also includes structural functionalism, as it is both a macro and a meso sociological perspective. Now, what are you looking at? Guys, can you please accept people in the lobby? Okay, so what are we looking at? So we are analyzing now the interplay between structure and agents. It goes back to what I said earlier to say, please take down that definition of structure and agents, because it applies in either question. Even if they didn't say talk about structure and agents, you are supposed to talk about the role of agents in fees must fall and the role of structure in leading to the events that happen in fees must fall. So that's something that you need to do. Now, you were told now to look at, again, applicational, guys. You see, again, we are applying. You are looking at the sociological imaginations application to these events. Oh, welcome, educationalists. Yes, so that's what we are looking at. You know? We are looking at, again, guys, you don't directly describe what the sociological imagination looks at, like have a long paragraph about it. You can get to the point, describe it by Mills, he says this, and again, get to the point to say, this is how it applies to fees must fall. So either way, guys, if they ask you or give you an essay question on week 4 and 5 work, you are still expected to talk about week 1 to 3 work. But in this case, you are applying it to the scenario they gave you. It can be fees must fall or roads must fall. It can be looting. It can be gender-based violence. Anything they give you, guys. We don't know what essay question they're going to give you. Either way, you need to apply week 1 to 3 work in you working with the sociological paradigms. So that's very important for you to take note of. So I don't know, I think I'm gonna have copyright issues in the website, but I'm gonna try anyway to do this. So I'm gonna attach a link to a booklet. So it is a booklet that has testimonials of students and lecturers and academics from different universities who were involved in fees must fall. Yeah? So I can attach a link to brain freeze. A link to, not to Loaz. I can, yes, I'll attach a link to Google Scholar where you will download the article for yourself. Because I don't want to have copyright issues on the website. Yeah, so I'll put it on the website for everyone, including the people that are not in the program to find. And for PSI students, you'll find it on the Google Classroom page for sociology. Yeah? So it will be easier for you guys to find. So please just go through that. It's a booklet with 135 pages. It has pictures. It's short testing comments of what happened from different universities. It's just students expressing what happened. So if you read those comments, in a way, it will also put you at a position where you can position yourself to try and think about how they felt about the events. It's important for you, if you have to explain how they exercise their agents, you need to know how they felt, what led them to exercise their agents. So the booklet is really good for you to get actual biographical stories about what happened. Yeah? So that's what I'm gonna give you guys. I'll just share it on the website for students on the site. When I post the video for today, I'll also just include a link to where you'll find that document. Anyways, let's continue then. Guys, we understand the question. We are fine. Eh? Yes, no, we are lost. No, I know we are lost, but do we see the question? You want me to ask that? We see the question. So I want us now to get to how do we approach answering the question. And before we can do that, we have to cover what theory do you need to know when you are looking at your sociological paradigms, because we didn't cover that. So I have a summary again, guys. Ne? So remember, the question says you need to look at, critically expropriate the interactions between micro, meso, and macro perspectives. So the next slide covers that. So your micro perspective that we think about is symbolic interactionism. Ne? Yeah, if you are not told directly what is it, it means that when they mark, there are marks for you identifying the micro-sociological perspective. And you, of course, when you identify it, you need to describe it. So this is how it views society. It's not the first time that you guys are seeing this. So symbolic interactionism sees society as a sum of interactions of people and groups. So, and it assumes that behavior is learned in interaction with other people. So it says that how people define a situation becomes the foundation of how they behave. Now, let's just look at an etymological inquiry into the word itself. Symbolic interactionism simply means we are looking at how do people interact with each other as a result of symbols. So the assumption that is brought by this paradigm simply says that people are going to act in certain ways, or people are going to interact with each other as influenced by their shared symbols. Again, we can even revert it to say, again, when people don't have shared symbols, it also affects how they interact with each other. You see that? If I'm speaking, remember with symbols, we get to be specific to say we talk about language, certain traits in the environment, whatever, because we look at those stuff. And remember, if someone talks about symbols is Vygotsky too. So it's the same symbols that he talked about when he was looking at psychological tools. So those symbols are the same ones. So we are saying that now, if we don't have shared symbols, it also affects how we communicate with each other. For example, if I decided to conduct this tutorial in Zulu, fully Zulu, it may exclude certain people because they wouldn't share the they wouldn't share the symbol that I'm using, you see, or the language that I'm using. So in that case, it means when I speak, they won't understand what I'm saying. So it affects our interaction. So it's an interaction where we don't understand each other. You see that? So symbolic interactionism looks at that. So we can look at it in the positive sense to say we have shared things. It also goes to we have things that we do not share. And they either way affect how we interact with each other. And then we have, the question said you need to look at the meso perspective. So the meso perspective we have is structural functionalism. So I'm gonna combine it with the macro perspective. Ne? So remember, functionalism, structural functionalism is both a meso and a macro sociological perspective. In your essay, they may want you to just focus on the macro, not the meso. Ne? So just focus on that in that case. Now, again, an etymological inquiry before we look at definitions. Structural functionalism, it's simply, it's formed by, or it simply assumes that society is structured in a certain way as defined by the functions that we pose for that particular society. Simply that. So the structures that we find in society are determined by the functions we choose to put for that section of society. For example, then we can just get to the details to say this perspective assumes that society will always be in a stable, in a sense of stability, or in a state of stability. And why does it assume that? It simply says that society is in a state of stability simply because we always attach functions to what we do. So in a way, it assumes that when we have structured functions for the society, then it creates rather what we call social order, of what we call value consensus, or social stability, or social equilibrium, or social what? Okay, yes, yes. So it creates that sense of stability in society. So that's what we are saying. So remember, with the functions that we talk about, okay, we'll get to the functions. This is just a description. So society, let me just read it as it is. Society is composed of interrelated parts that work together to maintain stability within society. What are those interrelated parts? Those are your social institutions. What are they? Economy, education, politics, religion, and family. Ne? So those are your 5 social institutions. What? Okay, so they're saying umdeni. Yes, so those are the 5 social institutions, and we are saying that they work in an interrelated sense with each other. And since they work interrelated to each other, that is what creates stability. Are you speaking? Mr. Partman is speaking. Oh, you're fine. Yes. So that is what creates stability. So that's structural functionalism. Ne? And then the last Marcos perspective is conflict theory, guys. It is self-explanatory. We are looking at what leads to conflict. We are theorizing as to what leads to conflict in society. And we say what leads to conflict in society is the inequalities that exist within the society. And they have a concept for that. We call that social stratification. So the hierarchical arrangement of people within the society. So that is what leads to conflict. Now remember, conflict theory is also known as Marxism. Yeah, so you can defend and say, I study Marxism. Yeah, so you're just looking at conflict theory. And why do we call it Marxism? It's from our economist and philosopher known as Karl Marx. So he focused on how does money as a social force in society lead to conflict and social inequalities that exist as a result. So that's conflict theory. We'll look at the details to it, and the focus really is how does it apply to education. Okay. Yeah, so now let's compare then our theoretical perspectives. So remember, this is going back to your question. You need to look at the interplay, or rather the role, or rather how can we use these perspectives to explain roots must fall and fees must fall. And for you to do that, you need to first know what does each perspective focus on? What questions does it answer, so that you can relate that to fees must fall and roots must fall. The first one is symbolic interaction. I'll start that side. Marco, Mizo, Marco. Ne? First one is symbolic interactionism. The question we ask there is, how do people co-create society? So in the fees must fall context, we're gonna ask, how did social agents co-create or co-lead to fees must fall? You see that? So we look at how did they interact with each other to lead to fees must fall or roads must fall. And again, we ask, how does social interaction influence, create, and sustain human relationships? Now, social interaction, looking at the influence of social interactions, we are looking at then how did students come together as social agents, sharing this one symbol, which is wanting the fees to fall, for them to actually lead to sustained relationships within the movement that led to the social change that we observed when we watched the documentary. Because you'll see that throughout the events, there were, in a way, same faces you were seeing throughout. So it shows us that we had sustained human relationships throughout the fees must fall protest. So same student leaders led the protest and towards till the end. of it. So that's what we think about. And the last one says, do people change behavior from one setting to another? If so, why? So we can think about it. Mr. Kumalo here, innocent boy at home. He respects parents. When he comes to university, he's a politician. He's calling for fees to fall. He's a revolutionary. Yeah, and you can think about it, that is showing us a change in identity. You know? So when he's at home, he doesn't, if he wants to remember at home, that's the family institution. He can decide to move a revolution to say, when parents say, you come at 5, he says, no, I'm not gonna come at 5, I'll come at 1 in the morning. So yes, yeah. So in that case, what is Mr. Kumalo doing? It goes back to this, yeah, the interplay between structure and agents. So Mr. Kumalo will be exercising their agents, right? So interactionism also looks at that. How does one's identity change as they move across different social contexts? So it's what you are doing your literacy essay too. How does identity change as one become mobile? Okay, now again, the most important thing is that if the identity changes, why does it change? So in this case, Mr. Kumalo's identity changes when he gets to university because he is faced with this personal trouble of not affording fees. So in that case, it becomes a social force, you see, that influences him to change his identity. And he's gonna act in a certain way. Do we get it, people? Yeah, so that's what you look at. Yeah, so symbolic interactionism assists us in looking at it. So when you're analyzing the events, you try to answer some of these questions. Ne? Yeah, so that's that. And then in the meso sociological sense, the meso and the macro, remember that's structural functionalism. So the question we ask then is, what keeps society functioning smoothly? Applying it to fees must follow. Society smooth during the protest? No. Why wasn't it smooth? Because we had an instability within one of the institutions, which is the education institution. And we always say that society is a stable machine of some sort. That works in an interrelated sense, né? Which means when one part of the society falls, it affects all other fragments of society. So we can think about it. Because of fees must fall and roads must fall, we had instabilities in society. So the society was not smooth. So because of the problems as a result of the protest at that time, in the education context, we can think about this. It prompted the politics as an institution to react to that. So they deployed police to shoot students. And we say that those students died. Ne? And when people die, which institution is involved? Religion. So it affected religion. Which other institution is involved? Family. So because the families gave their kids to go study, now they're coming back in cascades and dead, you see, as a result of that. So it affects family and religion, because in religion, they have to bury these young people that have died in the protest. And again, in the general sense, we can think about how fees must fall led to the destruction of infrastructure, right? So they were burning buildings, malls, and shopping centers. We saw that in the documentary. So again, we can think about the institution that is affected, that is the economy institution, you see that. So one instability from education affected all the other 5 institutions. So society did not function smoothly as a result. So guys, you see that I am not focusing on the events of fees must fall, but I'm focusing on the analysis of the events. So for you to analyze, of course, you need to know what happened first, so that you can apply the paradigms. Yeah. Which means you can just look at this question, this box of questions, and write your entire essay. It's basically that, because it assists you to look at what do you really focus on when you are trying to analyze. For any event, if they give you GBV, same way, you think about what institution is affected with GPV. So GPV starts in the family, and when women and queer people are violated against, it causes, what's this? We know that they die, and it's it became an epidemic when they were killed. So because they were killed, it goes back to religion as an institution. So you have to bury these people. And again, it affects the economics because it means that people have to use money that was saved to bury these people. Again, generally speaking now, on a basis of GDP and investment, when investors see that South Africa is really unsafe, there's a lot of violence, they're not going to invest on it. It also affects the investors we get in the border sense. So you see that it's a small problem, father and the mother fighting at home, but it affects the broader society. So that's what you can think about. And again, you can think about how it affects education as an institution. So you have these academics observing this problem. So they are going to, in a positive sense, they're going to integrate gender education into the curriculum. You see, so there has been a change in the curriculum as a result of that problem. You see that. And another way to look at it, there's a kid there observing as these parents are fighting. So they're gonna go with their frustrations and bully other kids at school. You see that. So it affects the education institution. See, in that case, I covered everything. Yeah, I covered everything. Yeah. So any event, guys, you get, analyze it in that way. Yeah. So that's what you need to do. Yes. Yes.
A student to go to prison, which institution is it affected? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yes. Yeah, we forgot. Yeah, we forgot one institution. It was politics. Yes. Yeah. So remember, law and order falls under the politics institution. So when this father has killed the mother, the police have to be involved, the magistrate has to be involved, and all of that. So law and order is also involved. So politics as an institution is involved. And again, the number of prisoners will now increase. And again, it affects the investments. You see, South Africa is a violent country. We can't invest there because they're going to loot our business. You see, with looting, same thing, guys. It starts small, it affects other institutions. You see, guys, sociology is so easy. You actually practically do that when you're analyzing your stuff. Okay, yes. And then the next question is, don't whisper.
In the exam. Yes. So we have to answer based on these questions under these paradigms.
Yes.
Okay, so you're late. Okay, yes. So he was asking if we can, you guys can answer. Yes, he was asking if you guys can use these questions to answer any sociology-based question in the exam. Be it any scenario, and I'm saying yes, you can do that. It makes your life easy, really. Okay, so then the second last question is, what are the parts of societies? Remember, parts of society are your social institutions. We outlined that already. And how do they relate? I've also shown how they relate. When there's one problem in the other, it affects the entire society. That's why some of the sociologists like Spencer, they called sociology social physics at first, because they thought we could apply biological theories into okay. Sorry, guys, my phone was in. Yes. Okay, so he was assuming that we can apply any science theory to society, which was proven to be false. That's why sociology is not a natural science, but a social science. Yeah. So that's that. Yeah, it's based on this organ system narrative. And again, it goes back to say, okay, we'll talk about that right now in the next part. Okay, and then we also ask, what are the intended functions? What are the unintended outcomes of an event? So with intended functions, we are looking at what we call manifest functions. Yeah, so manifest functions, when we say we want kids to go to school, we want them to go for this specific reason. So that's the goal at hand. Those are manifest functions. And then we know that there can be unintended functions that can result. So an example of an unintended function of that will be an unintended function of people going to school will be that, for example, they will be getting to socialize with other kids, so they will learn or improve their social skills, as an example. So we call those functions the latent functions. Latent functions, so it's an unintended function. Yes, that's the sociological concept for that. In your analysis of fees must fall event, you can think about what latent functions arose. So remember, the manifest function was for fees to fall. The latent function became roads must fall. You see that? Yeah. Another latent function was insourcing. Remember, the cleaners were fighting within the university spaces to be insourced so that they get their medical aid and all. And another latent function was feminism. You remember that there was a point where, what? Oh, yes. So you remember that there was a point where, brain freeze. Yes, there was a, yes. So remember with Fees Must Fall, there was a point where guys, can you stop doing this funny noise? Yeah, so there was a point where the females were on the lead during the protest. And there was, I think there was a drive to say Mbogoto must fall as a result, because certain EFF students and SASCO students felt that the student leaders who were females at the time during the 2016 year were too emotional about the protest. So there was a whole hashtag Mbogoto must fall, which was another latent function. So now let's just categorize with latent functions. They can be positive, they can be negative, they can be neutral. When they are positive, they lead to things like roads must fall, things like feminism, things like insourcing. Yeah, feminism, yes, because women were acknowledged as part of the movement. See that? It's a positive thing. And then as a neutral thing, then we'll say that, let me see. As a neutral thing, it doesn't change anything. Oh, as a neutral thing, we can think about what happened at Wits. There was a change in Senate House to Solomon Mahlangu House. So before that, it was called Senate House. After that, it was called Solomon Mahlangu House. It did not affect anyone. It's just a name change. That's why even now, some of you know it as Solomon Mahlangu House. Some of you know it as Senate House. So it was a change that happened during that time. So there was another thing that happened was the call for decolonization of curriculum. So we had that in the video again to say, students were saying, no, we need to decolonize what is the knowledge we do in the university space to fit into our African ways of doing things. And we call that epistemic decolonization. We will talk about it in Block 2, 2022 in African philosophy. So for now, let's stop there. And then another thing that arose, I'm giving you answers for example. Another thing that arose that is neutral was the call, okay, it has a term, this changing of places in the university spaces. So that was the decolonization of university spaces. So certain places were needed to be named because it was argued that they are still symbols of the oppressive system of the past. So there were those many name changes. You can In the booklet, I'll send you 135 pages. You'll see some of the changes that happen. Yes, it's 135 pages. Guys, it has a lot of pictures. That's why it's students with, yeah. Yes, 136. You'll just check some of the changes that happen. Yeah, so it has a list of the name changes that happen in different institutions. So you can check that out. It's an example of a neutral function. And a D function then was students now destroying property, private property, people being killed. That was not the point of fees must fall. So students dying, people dying in stampedes, and then stampedes and all of that. So and so on and so forth. Again, the Mbogoto must fall drive is a D function because it perpetrated gender inequality within the movement. You see that. So those are some of the things that you think about. Again, you see, even last time we did this, through this table, we shortcutted perspectives. So we basically covered what you need to know. So let's just think about the paradigms themselves. So I'm gonna be quick for this section. It's things I've applied already. Yeah? Okay, so we have symbolic interactionism. Now remember, symbolic interactionism starts with symbols. Yes. No. Yes. Yeah. So we have symbolic interactionism, and where does it start, guys? It's in the name itself. Symbolic interaction starts with symbols. Ne? So we say that people. Listen. We say people have shared symbols, and we say that because they have shared symbols, they establish meaning from these symbols. And these meanings become or turn into views about certain places and certain things in society. And we say that people get to a point where they communicate with each other, or they communicate these views to each other about the symbols. And we say that that communication is what forms a society. So we say a society, that's the grouping of people that interact with each other, right? It's the basic definition of a society. So it starts where? With symbols. They have these shared symbols that they make meaning from, establish views about, and communicate with each other, which in turn forms a society. Symbolic interactionism says we need to be cognizant of that. So remember, these are theories, which means they have criticisms. So symbolic interactionism is a criticism of structural functionalism and conflict theory. And why is it a criticism? Because it is fighting the fact that we need to stop looking at society in the broader sense only. We need to also take note that society is formed by individuals who are meaning-making beings. So these are the 8 approaches or 8 views from symbolic interactionism. So it's a summary of the 2 readings were prescribed on symbolic interactionism. So the first one says, people act towards symbols. And these symbols can be ideas, objects, and I said language. Ne? So that's what you have. But we say that, but they do so on the basis those things have for them. So if you interpret this as a table, it's on the basis of you having chairs that accompany it. While if you go to an under-resourced school, they will use a table as a chair as well. You see that? So it plays a dualistic role. That's what we mean when we say it is dependent on what it means for them and what you have access to at the moment. And then we say number 2, these meanings stem from our interactions with other people. So from students interacting with each other in the school, they see that we have less chairs and more tables. And let's use them, let's use the table as chairs, you see that. So they've established a new gaze at this. And number 3, people do not just internalize meanings. They are able to modify them through an interpretive process. If you did teaching experience with us, you did interpretivism, you remember that. No? Interpretivism is a sociological theory that we'll talk about next year. Yeah, so we were really introducing you to that. So you create interpretation, you'll do it next year and in honors level. Yeah, so you create, we say that your meaning making is not static, it changes, can be altered. So in that school, when there are more chairs now, the tables stop being chairs, they become tables again, you get what I mean? So it's not concrete. You interpret things. I think that's the simplest way to describe it, people. So that's what we are meaning here. Then we say people, in contrast to other animals, are unique in their ability to rely on symbols. That's an argument that Vygotsky made to say we use symbols, psychological tools, to make sense of our environment, to try and master our environment. Okay, so that's what we have. My laptop just switched off. I don't know what happened. Okay, so in the meantime, I'll continue with what I was saying. Yes, so that's what we have there. It supports really what Vygotsky said. So when we understand our symbols, it makes us to master our environment as living beings. Ne? Okay, and then the next one says that people are conscious and they are capable of reflecting on themselves and what they do, and therefore capable of shaping their actions and interactions. So that's another thing to say that humans are not robots, guys. They can interpret their environment. They can consciously make decisions of what is right and wrong within, depending on their context. And again, we say people define situations, they give them meaning and act towards them. So reality is basically socially constructed. So that's what we have over there. The last point really calls everything together. My laptop switched off, guys. I'm gonna reshare the slide. I'm just switching it on. Yeah, so that's the last thing we have on that. Now remember, guys, just another concept is to say symbolic interactionism is mainly dependent on, number one, context. So from the context, that is where we find symbols. So you'll do symbolic interactionism in detail next year. Ne? Yeah, so we talk about the context where these symbols are found. And we move on to say, we also think about, we then think about our interpretations of those contexts in trying to establish concrete symbols that assist us to understand the society that we are for. That's the next thing that we look at. And again, we think about then the negotiation. We have the negotiation process. So those are the main concepts, by the way, of symbolic interactionism. So through negotiation, we are then able to communicate this stuff with each other. It's basically that cycle I was explaining and summarize. So through the negotiation process, we are able to share our perspectives about the world, and in a way it becomes or defines the structure that we are going to form part of. So for example, your interactions within the family institution will be different from your interactions from the school or education institution, simply because of the symbols that you guys have access to within that particular institution. So that's what we think about. And another thing that we look at is how do these then interactions affect how people see you when you become mobile. So when you move across different borders. So people create different meanings of different views about you. So for example, we can ask, how do your parents see most of you? Innocent babies, ne? Yeah, harmless. And they don't know what's hiding behind that innocence. Ne? Yeah, and then again, we can think about, how do your friends look at you? Yeah. Okay, they're saying party freak. Yeah, so we can think about that. So your friends will look at you as a party freak and all of those traits. So it also informs your personal identity, you see, between within that particular context. And we can ask a crucial one. Guys, it's an academic one. I'm going to show you on a diagram. Again, we can ask, how does your ex look at you? Yes. Yeah, so again, it's the same thing. Your identity is, yeah, it's too personal, yes. So your identity, in a way, they look at you as this evil person who is unloving and uncaring. Yeah, so that's what we think about in symbolic interactionism, people. Okay, now an important thing then, guys, is to think about the applications of this to education. Just a moment. Okay, so number one, we say that symbolic interactionism allows for what we call credentialism. So remember, credentialism looks at the credentials you have, and it is based on your qualifications and all of that. So we say that symbolic interactionism applied to education can be seen in that way. It assists us in identifying people based on their subjects of specialization and the work that they do. You see that? So in that case, that becomes some sort of a symbol, because if we know, okay, this is a doctor, it means that they are out for issues of social matters, right, in society, because all they know is the body and medicine. If it's a teacher, you know that they know nothing about medicine. You see that? Yeah, so they just know it's a profession with biology and anatomy, or depending if they are specializing on biology. And then again, with the police, they just know how to be violent and hit people. Yeah, they don't know anything about teaching and learning. Yeah, so in a way, it goes back to what you did in PATs. We say teachers are specialists. So we use specialist language and ways of doing things. Same thing applies with that. We say that symbolic interactionism allows us to be able to do that. Okay, and then another benefit of it is that it allows, okay, guys, it's that one thing. It's labeling. It's based on that. It's labeling theory. Okay, again, another sneak peek is that you will do labeling theory next year, block 2 in African philosophy. So labeling theory is a symbolic interactionism trait. Okay, so guys, this is gonna turn into a lecture, like kind of a thing. So I have the presentation here. So I'm gonna try. Okay, I'm gonna share it with my phone. Okay, so yeah, guys, I don't know if you're gonna see that or what. Weird. Oh my God. Yeah, guys, I'm sourcing the video we had on YouTube, so that's where the presentation is. Anyways, the next thing that we look at then is structural functionalism. Now, structural functionalism in detail, it looks at how society is structured in an organ system kind of a format, right? So we think about society in that case, and we say that according to structural function, yeah, no, guys, it's not gonna work. I'm gonna stop sharing. Yeah, it's fine, guys. It's gonna be a lecture now. I'm sorry. No, guys, we have to finish. We are in structural functionalism. It's not that long. Short and simple. Yeah, so with structural functionalism, I'm just gonna cover the essentials. We look at society as a structured system that is interrelated, as we said. Now, the major concepts we look at is the functionalism, what's this? the types of functions that we have in society. So we think about manifest functions, latent functions, and D functions. And we say that latent functions can be neutral or positive. Ne? So that's what we looked at. It's exactly that's not that complicated. Now, when you're applying it then to, in terms of concepts, we say that in the educational context, structural functionalism plays the role of ensuring that society is in a state of social equilibrium, ne? Or education plays the role of ensuring that we have value consensus within society. What does that mean? Or how does it do that? We talk about socialization as a process, ne? That we use. So there are different types of socialization. Now remember, socialization simply involves an individual being influenced to behave in a certain way or to adopt certain morals, values, and ways of doing things accepted in that society. And we say that there is primary socialization, and where does it happen? It happens in the family institution. So you are primarily socialized to the world's ways of doing things, or to the society's way of doing things in the family institution. And we move on to say we have a secondary socialization, and that looks at the role of schools in society. So schools play the role of secondary socialization. So they prepare you for the work market, they prepare you for interacting with people in broader society as you meet various kinds of people in that space. Yeah, so that's secondary socialization. Now, another thing we say that education plays the role of, what's this? It becomes the allocator of careers of some sort for the economy institution, because people specialize in certain fields. So in a way, it also creates stability across society, because we cannot all qualify to be teachers or all qualify to be doctors or police or whatever, you see. So education is used as that mechanism to maintain social order as it allocates roles to society. So that's something we also think about education in the perspective of structural functionalism. And then a criticism then will come to say it's from conflict theory, which is the last one. So a criticism from conflict theory is that it argues that structural functionalism does not consider the fact that through it selecting roles or allocating roles in society, it may lead to social stratification, or it may lead to people being classified into classes or hierarchies, you see that. So in that, it's a criticism to say, as much as structural functionalism helps society, but it also leads to the conflict that we have as some people become poorer and some become richer because they may be academically gifted. You get what I mean? So that's the criticism conflict theory has on structural functionalism. And we know that conflict theory simply focuses on how social inequalities in society may lead to conflict. And that's what we call social stratification, as I said. So we think about how are resources distributed within society? How do people that have resources keep the resources or maintain having access to these resources? So we ask, if you are rich to what's this? At whose expense? You get what I mean? So you are rich, but who is suffering because you are rich? And again, we think about how do they maintain, in terms of power dynamics, think about how do people maintain having access to power? How do they keep their decisions of power? And how do they use their power? You see that. And another criticism on education then from conflict theory is to say it leads to the wealthy, or it allows for the wealthy to oppress the minds of the poor so that they remain in the lower social status. You see that? So that's a criticism it also has on education. So in that it promotes the inequalities instead of addressing the problem. Yeah, so that is that on conflict theory, guys. I tried to summarize it. I have something, I have to run somewhere quick. Yeah, but that is that, guys, on your paradigms. The last paradigm we were going to discuss is feminism. Remember, we have radical feminism. What's another one? Liberal feminism and Marxist feminism. Yes? So those are the three types we have. Liberal feminism, Marxist feminism. Marxist feminism basically is about the resource distribution. Eh? So it in a way, it sub-branches from conflict theory, see that? And then radical feminism is simply about, in a way, it's women feel victimized in terms of the distribution of roles in society, so they are fighting against that. Yeah, so now remember that feminism is one of the sociological paradigms, but we say it is a secondary paradigm because it has a bit of everything. Because for example, feminism looks at women, right? And it looks at women as individuals. And that's a trait that symbolic interactionism has. You see that? Again, it looks at how there are inequalities in access to resources within society, inequalities within the social structure that is gender-based. So in that case, we are looking at what? Your structural functionalism, you see, because it looks at the stability of in distribution of resources in society. And the last one will be looking at conflict theory, so that will be your Marxist feminists. So remember, liberal feminists are the modern day feminists, really. So they focus more on job distributions, which is in a way they're against patriarchy. Yeah. Feminism as a whole is against patriarchy, but liberal feminists are the modern day ones. They are more extensive to it because they focus on how roles are distributed, how jobs are distributed, how positions of power are distributed in society, who gets to raise the kids and things like that. Those are modern day topics, right? So liberal feminists focus on that. In that case, I am saying thank you for an amazing academic year we had together from EOH tutorials to RAA FYE from EOH tutorials to laser focus to RAA FYE tutorials to Pedagogical Science Institute, which is what we had today. We have today, and it's something that's growing. I can not exaggerate. It's an institute that is growing daily, and we are happy to have you guys. We are going to see each other next year. So please note that we are going to be removing everyone from the current group that we have. Ne? Yeah, so yes. Yeah, so the PSI academic year ends. Yes, so the PSI academic year ends it ends this Saturday. Ne? So this Saturday, you'll have your last BAT exam briefing this Saturday. BAT and literacy this Saturday. Yes, yeah, so that's what we have. So they are going to be online, by the way. Ne? Yeah, so those briefings are online. So they're not going to be contact. It's the last contact session we are going to have for the year. Okay, so that's what we're gonna that's what we are outlining. So thank you for attending, and all the best with your exams.